2:14 a.m. The ocean is almost perfectly calm. Somewhere in the darkness of the North Atlantic, a cargo vessel cuts slowly through black water that looks less like a sea and more like an endless sheet of oil. The radar hums quietly. The bridge lights glow dim red. A few sailors lean on the railings, staring into nothing, listening to the low mechanical heartbeat of the engines deep in the hull. For hours, nothing changes. And then, something does. It doesn't begin with wind, or thunder, or rain. It begins with a shadow. One of the crew notices it first, a strange distortion in the darkness ahead where the horizon should be. At first it looks like a trick of the eye, the kind that happens when you stare too long into black water. But the shape grows larger, and larger, and larger, until the impossible realization arrives. The horizon isn't rising, something else is. The wave appears without warning, without story, without reason. A wall of water climbing into the sky where no wall should exist, 30 meters high, maybe more. The sailors don't even have time to shout before the sea lifts the entire ship like a toy and hurls it sideways. Steel groans, containers rip free. The deck tilts so violently that gravity itself seems to change direction. For a moment, the ship balances on the face of the water, like a fragile insect clinging to glass. Then, the ocean drops it. When the vessel finally rights itself, alarms scream across every deck. Equipment is destroyed, lifeboats ripped loose. Some sailors are simply gone, washed away into the darkness so quickly no one saw them fall. Later, the survivors will struggle to explain what happened, because there was no storm, no hurricane, no warning, just a single wave appearing out of nowhere. For centuries, sailors told stories like this, stories of monstrous walls of water rising suddenly from calm seas, stories of ships swallowed whole by waves taller than buildings, stories of oceans behaving less like physics and more like something alive. Scientists dismissed them as exaggerations until January 1st, 1995. At exactly 3:20 p.m. in the North Sea, a steel oil platform called Draupner is measuring waves using a new experimental laser sensor. The sea is rough, but nothing unusual for winter in the North Atlantic. Waves roll in at about 12 meters high, large but predictable. Then the instrument records something no scientist believes is possible. A single wave, 25.6 meters tall, nearly twice the size of every wave around it. The platform cameras capture the moment as the water rises like a liquid skyscraper, slamming into the structure with a force so violent it shakes the entire rig. Steel beams bend, windows implode, equipment shatters, but the sensors keep recording. For the first time in history, the myth of the rogue wave becomes undeniable fact. The ocean, it turns out, can concentrate its energy into a single monstrous surge. Waves forming from the collision of currents, winds, and pressure systems until one giant wall rises from the chaos. And when it does, nothing on the water is ready for it. But rogue waves are only one way the ocean turns against humanity. Sometimes the sea doesn't strike suddenly. Sometimes it waits. July 30th, 1945, 12:15 a.m. In the dark waters of the Philippine Sea, a heavy cruiser cuts quietly through the night carrying one of the most secret cargo missions of the Second World War. Hours earlier, it had delivered the core components of the atomic bomb that would later be dropped on Hiroshima. Now, the ship is heading toward Leyte Gulf. Most of the crew are asleep. They never see the submarine. The torpedoes strike seconds apart. The first tears into the bow, detonating fuel and ammunition. The second rips open the ship's side like a knife through metal. The explosion is so violent that the cruiser begins to sink almost immediately. Within 12 minutes, the vessel disappears beneath the surface. Nearly 900 sailors are thrown into the open ocean. At first, survival seems possible. Life jackets inflate. Groups of men gather in the darkness, clinging to debris, calling to each other across the water. The sea is calm. The stars are bright. Some even believe rescue will arrive by morning. But rescue doesn't come, because no one knows the ship is gone. The mission was secret. No distress signal made it out before the power failed. The Navy assumes the cruiser has simply arrived late. And so the men drift. Morning arrives first with the sun, then the thirst. Salt water burns their lips. Some men drink it anyway. Others hallucinate within hours, screaming about rivers and fountains that don't exist. But the worst arrives beneath the surface. Sharks. The Philippine Sea is home to oceanic whitetips, one of the most aggressive predators in the open ocean. At first, the sharks circle cautiously, drawn by the vibrations of hundreds of struggling bodies. Then they begin to attack. The water turns eager.
The water turns red. Men vanish mid-sentence. Others are dragged under screaming. Groups tighten together instinctively, pushing the injured toward the center. But the sharks return again and again. For 4 days and 5 nights, the survivors float in a nightmare of dehydration, sun exposure, madness, and constant attack. Some men simply give up, slipping beneath the surface without a sound. Others fight to stay awake because they know sleep means death. By the time a patrol plane finally spots them, purely by accident, only 316 remain alive. It becomes the worst shark attack disaster in human history. But even that story doesn't fully capture the ocean's indifference, because the sea doesn't hate humanity. It simply doesn't notice it, which makes what happened decades later even more unsettling. February 1995, a cargo ship in the North Atlantic reports something strange during routine operations. The weather is rough but manageable. Waves are large but consistent. Then, the radar shows something impossible approaching. A wall, not a line of waves. One single wall of water moving through the sea like a moving mountain. Crew members rush to the bridge as the horizon disappears behind a rising mass that blocks out the sky. The captain barely has time to shout an order before the wave hits. The ship climbs and climbs and climbs. The bow lifts so high that the propeller spins uselessly in the air. For several seconds, the vessel hangs at an angle so steep that anything not bolted down slides toward the stern. Then gravity returns. The ship crashes back into the trough below, with a force like a building collapsing. Crew members later say the sound of the impact felt like the ocean slamming a door shut. Ships have survived storms for thousands of years, but storms have patterns. The ocean does not always follow them, and the deeper scientists study rogue waves. The stranger the picture becomes. Some appear when currents collide, others when wind compresses energy across vast distances. In certain cases, wave energy stacks together, one wave feeding another, until a single giant surge erupts from the chaos, like pressure building inside a living system. Satellite studies now suggest rogue waves happen far more often than anyone believed. Thousands every year. Most simply occur where no ships are present, but occasionally someone is there. And when they are, the experience feels less like weather and more like encountering something ancient and unknowable. Sailors have always described the sea in almost religious language. A force, a presence, something older than civilization itself, standing on the deck of a ship in the open ocean at night. With nothing but darkness in every direction, the scale becomes impossible to ignore. Beneath the hull lies water deeper than mountains are tall. Creatures move below that humans have never seen. Pressure increases until steel would collapse like paper. The ocean is the largest environment on Earth, and humanity occupies almost none of it, which means every ship crossing the sea is essentially trespassing. Most of the time, the ocean allows it, but not always. Sometimes a single wave rises where no wave should exist. Sometimes a ship vanishes beneath the surface before anyone can call for help. Sometimes hundreds of sailors float for days in water that refuses to let them leave. And every now and then, for a brief moment, the illusion of control disappears, leaving only a fragile steel hull surrounded by endless water, a tiny human presence on a planet that is and always has been an ocean world. And when that ocean decides to move in ways we don't expect, the result doesn't feel like bad luck. It feels like something waking up, not angry, not malicious, just enormous and utterly indifferent, because the scariest thing about the sea was never the monsters we imagine living inside it. It's the realization that the ocean itself is already more powerful than anything we could invent. And it has been here far longer than we have, long before ships, long before sailors, long before anyone believed they understood it. Waiting, moving, breathing, and sometimes rising.